Meet the most capable CR-V Honda has ever dreamed of. The all-new CR-V Trail Sport Hybrid. With all-terrain tires and available enhanced traction control, it's built for wherever the day takes you. Heated front seats and a heated steering wheel? Ideal for winter drives and crisp early starts. And with generous cargo space, it's ready for big gear and even bigger getaways. The CR-V Trail Sport Hybrid. Learn more at honda.com/CRV.
Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the Riptide. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Ciao, homebrew community.
What's up, my homie brewers?
This is TC.
And I'm Big Mike, and you're listening to Brew Strong. I try to mimic the voice from the intro every time. You get it twice every show.
Travis, TC and Mike here, Big Mike here. While Jamil's away, and if you were listening to the last show because you're live on Facebook or because you are listening on Facebook, then you know we have our special guest Mufasa with us. And if not, you go back and listen to it, then you'll know that we have our special guest Mufasa with us. And we have Mufasa give himself a great intro, but I think it bears somewhat repeating. Mufasa, please explain to the people who you are as a brewer.
My name is Michael James Martin Ferguson, and they call me Mufasa. I've been a professional brewer for over 35 years and back to home brewing and working at a home brew shop for the last 5 years. I've worked for 3 major breweries, and now I just work for me.
And you say that, and honestly, so Mufasa works at my local homebrew shop, and that is the treat you can't imagine.
That'd be quite an asset.
Yes. You just have to look at the review for Farm Boy, and I mentioned Mufasa. The fact that they have him and the fact that I can walk in there and talk to Mufasa, I always find Mufasa. But I bring beers, we chat about the beers, feedback, outstanding experience. And Mufasa, I don't think you've ever pulled a punch.
I try not to. I have to tell the truth when it comes to beer, because you can't blow smoke up somebody's butt or they'll continue to make bad beer. So,
and then they'll bring it to you to drink.
Yeah.
Continue bringing you that beer to drink.
Yes. And then I have to say, the beer I've been getting over the last 5 years over there at Farm Boy has improved greatly.
Good job.
It has improved greatly.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this is part 2. What's the name of the show, Big Mike?
So we had Package-gasm 15 years ago on this very podcast. We went back in the annals and found it. And now we have Package-gasm 2. The Emily Capper Strikes Back.
Dun, 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 dun.
And yes, we reamed the annals to bring you this new show.
Yeah. So next time when they go back to the annals, they'll have to put up with me talking about the annals.
Yes, absolutely.
It'll be a layered annals.
In packaging, I think we asked Drew at Blickman, and I do think his beer gun is one of his most popular items. I mean, it can't be his most grossing item by a long shot because it's highly affordable, smaller product compared to all the things they sell, from their Anvil series up to their Pro Series equipment, which unfortunately I don't have any experience with Pro Series equipment, but almost everything else. But our longtime sponsor, been with Brew Strong since before I even knew what Brew Strong was, Blickman Engineering, outstanding equipment. I can't remember the email address, and that's one of the things I need to integrate into the show. I could do what Jamil and John used to do and give you the wrong email address, and you can use that for a couple of years.
The amazing thing is that Google will find that for you, as long as you know how to spell Blickman.
Yeah.
There you go.
Just go to blickmanengineering.com, find the contact us, and send them an email saying, Brew Strong is like magic in my ears, and I want to buy everything you sell. And if you don't want to do that, then just forget I said anything.
Well, say it anyway, and then tell them you need a beer gun.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've been pretty hot to trot. I've been eyeballing it for a while, but I'm about to make a move, I think, maybe soon, is the new kettle that has the electric built into the bottom.
Yeah.
That thing's pretty sweet.
You talk about the one with the door, right?
Well, it's a kettle where instead of having like the coil inside the kettle that heats, it's been built into the floor of
that's nice.
The bottom. So it's a coilless electric kettle. And that is really tickling my fancy. When I move away from my archaic fossil fuels, I will definitely be getting one of those.
Yeah. I mean, any of those Anvil foundries would be a wonderful thing as well.
It's built in same way.
Yeah.
And Mike Mufasa, I'm not opposed to using propane, but I didn't have the control on my propane that I have on my Anvil foundry.
Exactly.
Dial up percent. All of it's built in and runs 240. It's I love it. I would expect the one you're talking about, Big Mike, is probably designed for 240 exclusively. It's bigger equipment, nicer equipment.
And it's a kettle. It's purpose built for boiling only.
Right.
So if you had like a 3-tier like I have, or maybe a brew sculpture, but I think it's pretty sweet. I use a rims rocket for my mash tun, so I'm electric on the mash side because propane. I'm not trying to mess around with my mash tun and propane. So
all my
rocket,
propane
is a Blickman.
Yeah, all my propane is pretty much dedicated to my generator. So
there you go.
It's a great thing to have. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Don't forget to check out Blickman. Send them a contact us and tell them you heard us talking about them and you want to know more about their equipment. And what we should mention, should you be catching this on YouTube in the next 30 days, because we'll time out on YouTube in 30 days, presumably you're getting some tax dollars back if you're doing better than I'm doing. Their prices are great without a sale. I'm not saying they don't have sales, but they are. It's tax season, and they'd love for you to come visit them with some tax money, or not tax money, but visit them.
Yeah.
All right. So we gave a good definition of packaging, because packaging is a bigger concept than just putting the beer in the bottle the Travis way. On the last show, again, please go back and listen, because we're trying to follow a nice progression to help you make better quality beer, higher quality beer, and beer that lasts longer after it's in the package. But so Mike, what are you drinking?
Man, I just made this new beer. It was a cream ale base. I used a thiolizing yeast and Nelson Whirlpool. Pretty big dose of Nelson in the Whirlpool. I think I've been trying to. It doesn't fit a BJCP style because it ended up at 7%, but it's very light, very crispy, but then a little bit of like tropical fruit from the yeast and the Nelson. I want to call it an island ale. It's because New Zealand's an island, and
it's very light.
It is
beer.
But then Nelson is and all these are very tropical notes. So and this is pretty young. I've only had it in the keg about, I think today's 1 week. And so
did you mash hop?
No, that was
because the thiolized yeast does very well with mash hopping.
Yeah, I actually mash hopped the double IPA I sent to Travis last year, and I actually found that while the research shows thiols are higher, I got too much bitterness, and it kind of pushed it above the threshold for a hazy that I was looking for. So I've kind of moved away from mash hopping for that reason. For hazy beers, maybe with your West Coast, you might want to keep doing that. But no, this one, this is just basically a cream ale. So it's Pilsner malt, 25% corn. You've got another 5-10, or I think it's 5% dextrose. And then I did Omega's Cosmic Punch, which is actually a British Ale 5, which is a hazy yeast typically. But I was like,
mostly Conan strain, yeah.
Yeah, we'll send it. And then I did Nelson. I did a half ounce a gallon in the Whirlpool, which isn't crazy, but it's definitely way more than you would do for a cream ale.
Sure.
Right. You do it in cream ale.
As is 7%.
And then it ended up, I kind of missed a little high, if you will. A lot high.
As a BJCP judge, I call that a palate record.
Oh,
'Cause
okay.
I'm judging a string of cream ales, and then I get yours. Like that one should have been last, son of a bitch.
I wasn't. True story. If I was ever going to enter this in a VJCP competition, I'd probably put it in pale ale, just because it'd be so light and dry and drinkable. I
Maybe
think it
APA, American Pale Ale.
American Pale Ale, yeah, and
No.
kind of pull off like a dark horse, because I didn't dry hop it. I wanted to see what the Mega Dialysis yeast would do and kind of show through. I wanted to, because I did. It was kind of, I bought a bunch of it. I bought a bunch of this yeast, and I did a double IPA hazy. Then I did the hazy pale ale with Simcoe that I sent to Travis, and then I did this cream ale with no dry hop, a little bit of Whirlpool Nelson, to really kind of see what flavors are this yeast contributing to my beer. I've actually been really happy with it, and I'd love to send you guys some. So once it's packaged up, once I package it, listen to the show.
I'd love to have some, Mike.
Yeah, it's really fun. I've been drinking
drink it all though.
I know. Well, so I have 10 gallons though. So
well, you're going to can it up, and you can send it to us, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, like I sent some cans. I sent some my labels too to
Simcoe's Life, yes.
Nice.
Simcoe's Live. That's how you have to say it.
I apologize. Not really.
No, it's okay. I don't care. But no, so I will send you guys some, and you'll try.
Excellent. Mufasa, by any chance, are you drinking something you brewed, or are you drinking?
Actually, that one I didn't brew, but I was drinking something earlier today that we brewed at the shop. A couple of things. There's did you have this? I'm not sure if you did, the prickly pear cream ale.
Ooh, that sounds good.
I might have. And it was a short trip last time.
Yeah, you might not have, because we drank mostly your beer that was there, which is rather amazing, by the way. Do you have any more of that?
Yes. Big Mike's got some coming.
Oh,
Hell
excellent.
I'm so stoked, because I will say that that Brute IPA you sent me, I wish I had 10 of those. I was so excited about that beer. That was so good. I was texting you about it, but I was over the moon about it. So
wow, thank you.
Yeah.
So what the one that I think he preferred, Mufasa, he's getting a bottle of, was that Blue Lake, Michigan wet hop process.
Yes, that was so good.
Yeah, so that's what I had when we started our first show. I was drinking that. So it's smash. I call it a DIPA. That one probably ended about 9.4% Big Mike. Ooh. So it's big. All wet hops in the Whirlpool. All
really
Michigan
flavorful,
hops.
Really good Michigan Chinook. It's just wow.
You won't think Chinook.
No, you
Absolutely
won't.
Not.
No, you won't.
So all Chinook for the bittering, Michigan Chinook for the bittering, and the dry hop, but the wet hop on the Whirlpool, and all the same. I think all the same. Whatever you want to call it, they all came from the same field, effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lot, literally. So some were wet hops, some were pelletized. Yeah. It was cool to do it. It was
my fancy is tickled.
Yeah, and well, it should be, and it will be tickled more once you drink some of this.
Because we did the episode with the Blue Lake hops, and they were talking about how this is not a typical Cascade or Chinook or your typical Northwestern, Yakima region. This is Michigan.
Well, I've been liking a lot of the Michigan hops. Paradigm is still one of my favorite ones out of that region, and I find those to be very flavorful, very different from your Pac Northwest stuff. Even the varieties that have the same name, it's very different. And this shows terroir. The ground really does impart a flavor.
Yeah. Totally. I'm excited to check my mail, man.
So how did you package that?
That's what we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out how well I packaged it. Yeah, I did bottle it off Beer Gun, and warming up for this show today, I had listened to the Package-gasm, and I found that I had followed almost every one of the tips between Jamil John and John Blickman on how I fill my bottles using the Beer Gun now with the pre-purge.
Yep.
If we have that, we're gonna get. We don't necessarily. Okay, so that's all of that's covered. How to use a beer gun.
More to follow.
There's that too. Yes. So yeah, I followed the best of the best I could think of to fill it, and I also there's a bracket challenge. I think it's in Fort Worth. So I didn't have to brew to style. I could brew a beer.
You brew whatever you want.
Yeah. So I entered that wet hop beer in a bracket challenge. We'll see how it does.
This was like March Madness.
Yeah, it goes head
It
to head.
really is.
Here's
It's
beer.
like you just pick the best beer.
Mhm.
Nice.
So
That's cool.
I mean, it's a wet hop.
Ooh.
I can
Dude, we
brew
should
a
do that.
DIPA that someone who loves a DIPA might think is better than that wet hop, but it doesn't have the uniqueness or the flavor of that wet hop, and it's only better by certain guidelines, perhaps, because that wet hop beer you're going to get, it's really good. It's very flavorful. So I figured I don't want to waste my wet hop as a DIPA, but I'd be happy to put it in as a bracket challenge wet hop double IPA smash, all golden promise. Yeah.
Let's go.
I'm not gone. I just have to plug in my computer.
Okay. Okay. That was going to cover however we had to cover for you. So, gentlemen, let's take a short break while Mufasa plugs in his computer or otherwise, and we'll be right back.
Are you a home brewer who loves crafting your own beers but sometimes find yourself short on time? Or maybe you're a beer lover who's always been curious about homebrewing but felt intimidated by the process. Well, get ready to raise your glasses because More Beer has just revolutionized homebrewing with their incredible flash brewing kits. These kits are a game changer, designed for both seasoned pros and complete newbies. Imagine brewing exceptional beer at home with a fraction of the usual effort. We're talking 10 minutes of effort. That's the magic of flash brewing. Now, you know the traditional brewing drill. An hour-long boil, another hour for cooling. It's a commitment. But flash brewing completely rewrites the rules. We're talking about eliminating the boil altogether. Just mix and ferment. How, you ask? Let me break it down. Each kit includes pre-boiled and whirlpooled malt extracts, hop bite shots for bitterness without needing to boil, a blend of T90 or cryo hops, depending on the recipe, and the real secret ingredient, the specially formulated flash yeast, which starts quickly and produces clean beer that lets the malt and hops shine. The result? A delicious beer that will blow you away. All the flavor and satisfaction of a traditional brew, but in a fraction of the time. So whether you're a busy brewer looking for a quicker way to enjoy your hobby, or a beer lover ready to dive into the world of homebrewing, More Beer's flash brewing kits are the perfect solution. Head over to More Beer to explore the range of flash brewing recipe kits. You won't believe how easy and delicious homebrewing can be. That's morebeer.com.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on two gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at BlickmanEngineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew Strong.
And we're back. And remind us again, please, Big Mike, with the name of our show.
Package-gasm 2. The Emily Capper Strikes Back.
Thank you very much. Even if I could say it right, which I'm not sure I could, I don't deserve the credit of saying it. You came up with that name. I want you to say it.
I don't know, spitballing here. You got to get the music. I think we need to get JP in there mixing in the Star Wars music as I say it.
Yes, I don't know that, JP.
We might violate some copyright laws.
Oh, surely it will, but I'm not sure he can. Yeah. Although JP does the post processing, I don't consider the fact that he works for us, because I think it's entirely the opposite. We work for him.
Yeah.
Thank you, JP. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the second half of the show, the part 2 of the show, and we have Mufasa, Big Mike, and Travis TC right here talking. And are we ready to move into kegging in our packaging discussion?
Absolutely.
I'm in.
All right, Mike, tell us about kegging.
All right. So kegging. in the last show, we finished off with bottle conditioning, and that's where you're packaging the beer uncarbonated and conditioning in the bottle. Kegging is kind of a different vessel, of course. We all know what a keg. I mean, I would hope everybody knows what a keg is, and whether it be a 5-gallon, 10-gallon, half barrel. You're putting the beer in there, and I put my beer in the keg uncarbonated, and then we condition in the keg. I do not do keg conditioning where we're adding sugar. I'm using a forced carbonation method. So there's a lot of different techniques that I'd like to get into with everybody today. But, that's kind of the very general, what is it to keg? I think it's, you're taking your finished beer and you're racking it into this keg. As a home brewer, of course, we're home brewing focused. And you're either carbonating with natural carbonation through yeast and sugar, or forced carbonating with pressurization of CO2.
Excellent. And I think about kegging a little bit differently. Sometimes it's hard to remember what I did 2 days ago, much less 5 years ago. But we do seem to be kegging, would you say, closer to what the pros do these days as home brewers?
Yeah, I think kind of looking back at the Package-gasm 1, a new wort, they didn't really mention too much about what we call closed transfer. They mentioned it lightly, but they were talking more about auto siphons and right. Sucking with a hose to start a siphon, and
snapping off a fresh piece,
snapping off a fresh piece before you do that, and those kind of things that were more the traditional homebrew styles. I mean, nowadays there is a lot more that you can do with pressurization and forced closed transfers, if you will. The real big thing is trying to keep that oxygen off the beer the entire time.
What entails a quote unquote closed transfer?
So in the beer. Oh, go ahead, Mufasa.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't help myself. Sometimes words just fall out of my mouth.
We're all in. Let's go.
We invited you on so you could just sit there and not talk. That's what we expected.
I mean, this is one of the things I was talking about at the end of the last episode, because I feel that packaging is a way to keep your quality from how fresh your beer should be at the beginning and how it should be as close as possible to that when you pour it into the glass. And oxygen is one of the main things that ruins quality. And as home brewers, we generally don't have the oxygen testing equipment that a lot of people would have professionally. So closed transfer is not allowing any air to get to that beer from fermentation all the way until you're pouring into a glass. And that entails simple equipment. Basically, if you're transferring into regular Cornelius keg, you're going to have some way to equalize the pressure with the vessel you're coming from and the keg. So basically, you're going to use the CO2 in of the keg to neutralize the pressure in the vessel you're transferring from. And then you're going to take the liquid and go into the keg that way after the keg has been pre-evacuated with CO2. All right. So you're trying, and if it's been pre-evacuated well, then you really don't have to worry about transferring slowly so that you don't mix air with the CO2. But I always try to do it slowly because I don't want the turbulence. So it might take a little while, but as long as you have the equalized pressure, you could basically transfer as fast as you want if you're clear on how little oxygen is inside the keg. And you're using a motor in this instance. Now, if you're not using a motor, then you have to pressurize the vessel you're transferring from to push CO2 into the keg, and then have a spunning valve or some sort of way to release the pressure slowly from the keg so that you're filling the keg with as little turbulence as possible. That's why you don't want to fill it with an open thing, because of the foam, and then foam starts shooting out like your pressure relief. So the spunning valve is really the way to do it if you can, or just constrict the flow of whatever tube is coming off the CO2 input of your keg, because you're going to go through, that's going to relieve all the pressure until you see foam come out and know that the keg is full. Have I left anything out, Mike?
Well, I mean, I kind of take a different approach, but I mean, this is
okay. Let's hear
my whole thing is, so I'm using pressurized CO2 to pressurize the fermenter. slightly. I mean, we're talking 1 or 2 psi, nothing crazy, just to keep that headspace only CO2. And then when I actually have my keg has been pre-purged, it's actually pressurized, and that's kind of how I do my own little leak down test to make sure that it's not leaking, is the fact that it still has pressure in it when I go to use it. And what I do is I'll hook my racking tube to the pressurized keg so it's shooting CO2 out. And then that's what I attach to the closed valve on the racking tube or whatever you're using to transfer. And then what I do on the gas side of a Cornelius keg is I will put that in a big bucket of sanitizer, like a blow off in your fermenter. And that basically, then I'll vent the pressure that was still in the keg into that. And now I have kind of my isolated atmospheric pressure keg. And then I open the valve to the fermenter, and with the CO2 tank, I push the beer into the keg. And then the CO2 that was in the keg is now vented into the bucket. And it's worked really well for me. And, I'm really on the hazy hoppy train. So I'm
you need the oxygen as low as possible.
Yeah. And I need to see as much little oxygen as I can. So that's worked really well for me. And the whole making sure that everything is purged and stuff like that. So, and then even the purging of the keg, a lot of people just will fill it with CO2, vent it, fill it and vent it. I actually will fill the entire keg with sanitizer, and then I push the sanitizer out with CO2.
That's what I do.
Actually, within the first gallon of the push, so like I'm pushing out and it's filling a bucket, I can tell where I'm at about a gallon. I will vent it at the pressure relief valve 10 times to make sure if there was any oxygen or any little pockets where there was an air bubble, it was, then I've basically cleared that little tiny space in the keg 10 times before it gets real big.
So if I'm correct, and this is brilliant because a couple of things are going on there. One, you're using the water as a pressure valve release because you're only pushing the beer at very low pressure. So the actual water is a constriction that will keep the foam from happening inside the keg. That's one thing. And pressure displacement of a liquid is the best way to make sure that you've cleared all the CO2 out.
Because liquid is, we assume, is incompressible. So
right.
So unless I didn't follow exactly what you're saying, Mufasa, I might do a third method.
There we go. 3 for 3.
My fermenter is higher than my keg.
Gravity fed.
Yeah, but in a closed loop system. So I feed from my fermenter into my liquid post. And I take my gas post and route it back to what looks almost like a Splending type scenario. I got a pressure gauge up there and a pressure relief that I never hit because my fermenter will only hold about 2-3 psi. So I make sure the lines are purged of any yeast buildup in my out nozzle, blah, blah, blah. And I do have pressure in the keg, but it's only for the purpose of sealing. Most of that will flash right off because the PRV, PSV on my fermenter is about 0.5 psi. It's a little dime sized thing, So I open the keg up to the top of the fermenter, put some pressure up there. It's not really doing anything. Most of it's bleeding off. And then I open the valve out of the fermenter into the keg. And I just let gravity do it. In the meantime, I start cleaning up other bits. So,
so that's a slow transfer.
Yeah, it is. It's 100% foamless, let me tell you, because slow transfer, I'm feeding in my liquid tube all the way to the bottom at a slow rate. And my keg has been purged similar to what Mike does. When I clean my kegs, I never cleaned it till I need at least 4 cleans. I'm call that what you will. So I've got 4 kegs to clean. So my keg cleaning process uses my Anvil Foundry because I can get my PBW up to 160, and I circulate my PBW through the fittings full, 160 degrees, 15 minutes.
Nice.
Do a dump, transfer, get the next one going, rinse that out. I have, honestly, some people might say I'm overkill. Neil Spag, if you're listening, might say I'm overkill. I always have a keg full of PBW water and a keg full of Star San water made up. So my Star San keg is there. I'll take the one the cleaned keg I just rinsed. I'll dump a gallon or so of Star San water in there. I'm only specifying because it's not just the powder. It's not just So I'll dump the Star San in there, and because I'm going to lose some, I'll close that up, and I'll pull the poppet, and I'll force my keg of Star San into there until it's coming out the poppet. I shut that down because I'm still cleaning my next keg. When my next keg's clean, I'll rinse it and I'll put it next. And I push that Star San in the next one. So I'll end up daisy chaining through my kegs, pushing that Star San through the kegs with CO2. So they are CO2 purged. And I'll always push into their new keg with the poppet open. So I'm getting all the way up to the top. So I push that Star San out with CO2 filled keg. And that's the same keg that, all right, I got to pop the top. I've got to add something so I don't, what do you call it? Not isinglass. I use my, one of my findings.
Biofine?
Clear.
Silifine?
Clear.
Biofine clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Silifine. I got to pop it to add that in. I'll cap it back up real quick. So it's not 100% perfect, but that keg sits waiting for my next beer with, I'll call it 0 oxygen. I won't call it 0.00% oxygen.
Okay. So we've discussed three different techniques here. Some of them will vary according to how much pressure you have in your fermentation vessel. The two that I discussed, especially if you're using a pump, depends on having the full pressurized beer already carbonated coming from your fermentation vessel into the keg, which is why you want to have a closed loop going back to the fermentation vessel.
Because critical on the pressurized.
Yes,
it's carbonated. Foaming's critical.
It's so that's very critical. That's why I like the closed loop method on that. Doing the pressure relief version is you're using a lot more CO2 because you're not replacing you're not actually circulating CO2. The first transfer requires a riptide or another Blickman product that moves your beer from one vessel to the other. And that's why the closed loop, there's no need to add CO2.
I would use a peristaltic pump if I had one handy, but they're not very common except for in Blickman's easy, quick carb.
Yeah, the quick carb is a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing, by the way, and it works very well if you haven't used one. But the riptide works fine if you're under pressure. Yeah, right. So, and then the other way, when you've got just pressure going one way and you're relieving it off the top of the keg, that is, of course, forcing out the CO2 that was purged. And if you waited a little while the CO2 was in the keg and you refrigerated the keg to make sure the CO2 is at the bottom of the keg, then you're pushing out any air that might be at the top and the CO2 to follow as the beer pushes it out. The way Mike does it is also very cool, but can you do that under pressure, sir?
Well, I would say it is kind of under pressure where the fermenter is pressurized to an unpressurized keg.
Right.
So there's a pressure gradient there that it can drive it into the keg no matter what level they're on. But
are you controlling that by your length of tubing?
No, I actually am controlling it with the regulator on the CO2 bottle. And so I'll just keep it.
You spun a little bit, so you already have a few PSI in your beer?
No, actually, I'm at 0. Actually, I can't say that. Sometimes I'm at a couple PSI because I actually will pressurize to cold crash.
Right.
And then, so then from there, I'm at less than 5 PSI and I'll drive it with that pressure difference into the keg. Well, like I said, where the keg is then venting into a bucket of sanitizer.
Right.
So I might be half of a volume naturally carved. You might be almost a whole volume naturally carved, but Mufasa, your technique will go all the way up to maybe 2 volumes naturally carved. Oh, not naturally carved.
Yeah, you can have
I mean, beer. I was speaking in terms of naturally carbonating in the in the fermenter.
Yeah.
And then transferring under pressure so that the foam doesn't happen. Yeah.
So
these are all valid techniques and they all work, it sounds like to me.
Yeah. I think it's like take your pick. But the key is there is no atmosphere. Your beer is not being exposed to the atmosphere at any point.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And that's the big one.
And I don't know how many people know this, and they should as homebrewers, but the second you pour a beer into a glass, light and air get to it, and it is in the process of oxidizing several different ways once it's in the glass. And people are still surprised at how big a difference is. You pour a glass of beer, 20 seconds later, you pour another glass of beer. A minute later, you pour a third glass of beer, and then you smell them all, and you will see there are 3 different beers because light and air get to them so quickly and it starts to oxidize. So you don't want any of that to happen prior to you've pouring the beer,
Right.
which means packaging is critical to keep those things as fresh as you want it to be. And go for it.
Yeah. And I would say, like, let's say you don't have a conical fermenter, or you don't have any kind of high-speed equipment. You can do this with your CO2. If you have a bottle of CO2, which if you're kegging, I would think you should
Absolutely.
to be able to serve it, you can get to where you can control that pressure to be very, very low. And, I usually do where I can push the button on the corny fitting, and I can hear it kind of barely coming in. And I've actually used like an anvil crucible, which is not designed to be pressurized, and used a closed transfer where I'm pushing it with the tank and didn't have any issues. So, I mean, even with glass carboys, if you're very careful and you have those special stoppers that have multiple holes in them that you can hook I was doing that same thing with the anvil crucible, because it is just a stopper on the top. You buy the special one that has an extra for the blow off, and so you pull that blow off and put the tank pressure on there. Yeah, things like that. But I would just say, like, even if you want to keg condition with natural carbonation, I would still try to do a closed transfer. And what I do with when I add findings, which you would do with your sugar syrup, is during the transfer. So you're driving the beer into the keg, so there's that flux. If you were to open the corny keg lid, the big lid, you'd have that CO2 being pushed out of the lid as you poured your ingredients in. Mm-hmm. And that's where I add my findings, and I add if I was to do, I haven't done it because I always force carb. I don't really see if you want to though, I would add your sugar syrups then at the beginning of the fill, where you're driving, and that the air pressure, that flux is being pushed out. Mm-hmm. You always want air going out of whatever you're adding stuff to. And I would, at least for me. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So Mike, I think your technique is probably best if you're transferring to a carboy. You have to modify it a little bit. Transferring from a carboy.
Right.
Obviously, you're not going to have a higher CO2 volume in the carboy. And my technique, you're going to have to put that carboy about 10 feet up to get a good gravity feed off of it.
Right.
So you want a little bit of makeup pressure if you're going to force transfer clothes off of a carboy. And I imagine, Mufasa, you can tell me if I'm crazy on this. I imagine if you're using one of the silicone caps, the cap's going to blow off before you have a problem, because those carboys are not designed for pressure.
Yeah. And
but those caps are very solid. They attach very well. And you just have to make sure that you don't have any leaks coming out of the two holes that are in the top of those caps.
But on the safety side, if you overpressure it, the cap will fly off. You won't break
the carboy.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah.
And I would say with that is it's just enough pressure to like start the siphon. It's like it can kind of drive it over and start the siphon, and then you're away.
Yeah, I certainly think a combination of pressure and gravity would do that if you don't have pressurized fluid, if you don't have carbonated fluid.
So it's not that this is high tech, but closed transfers have become more popular, I would say, in the home brewing community than they would have been at the first. I mean, John and Jamil give us some closed transfer concepts back in 2010, but it's maybe everybody's brewing better beer. I don't know. And I don't mean that you weren't making good beer if you weren't doing closed transfer, but you're trying to dial in all the extras. All right. So you made a great beer. The last thing you want is you didn't package it perfectly. So now it's not as great a beer. So, So really, I think closed transfer has just become a whole lot more popular.
It should be.
and certain companies that sell fermenters and so forth sell closed transfer kits to match their fermenters. It's a thing these days.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe one of these days we should do a Brew Strong YouTube video where we kind of run down our, like, visually you can see what we're doing and get better. Because I know if you're just listening to this, it might be a little tricky to follow. But I think the big takeaway is 15 years ago, auto siphons and natural siphons were kind of acceptable methods, and almost like, if you're really crazy, you could do a closed transfer. And whereas now I think in home brewing, I think it's highly recommended if you want to make that if you want to take that next step in quality and really be able to to have people you let sample your beer go, wow, that tastes like I bought it at the grocery store. Like that. I think that's a big difference is when I noticed from my brewing is when I started closed transfers, all that stuff is the beer really takes that next step to like it could rival professionals, and then you take another step where you're just like, well, I'm doing stuff professionals can't do. So
right, like because they have 18 days waiting after you finish.
Well, I don't. Yeah,
fermenting.
well, I said 18 days total. If you
right, this is true.
But it's that's still way longer than a pro would probably let.
Oh no, I mean Budweiser does 6-day turnarounds. Okay.
Oh yeah,
and they've been fermenting under pressure for a very long time because that's how they do that 6-day transfer.
Yeah.
So keg conditioning.
The beer's in the keg. We have done that, right? We all agree.
Mm-hmm.
We got beer and keg.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two kind of big paths you can go. You can do the natural with sugar. You can do the forced carbonation. And again, Package-gasm 1 did a lot of work on how to do this and how to properly set volumes and design to get the right amount of sugar and yeast to get the right amount of carbonation. My really big thing I would say is trust those resources. Go to, there's really good references for sugar amounts, yeast amounts to get that right carbonation, and then data log or write it down. You don't have to data log. It's just taking notes.
Good news is if you keg condition, you're not likely going to shatter your keg.
No,
you could shatter a bottle. So if you overcalculate, I'm not saying overcalculate on your. Clearly, don't use extra sugar, but you won't destroy your your keg the way you could destroy bottles
and other things.
Is there? Do you either one of you feel there's a point in time where you feel like you need to keg condition versus force carb?
There might be certain beers where you would want to keg condition. I'm thinking in terms of lambics or Belgian beers or things like that come over bottle conditioned, things like that. Keg conditioning might enhance those sort of flavors.
And you think doing it in a keg is a good option versus doing it in a bottle?
I'm
not challenging. I'm asking.
I would think. I've never actually attempted keg conditioning. The only thing I've done that was not carbonating was using dry ice to carbonate.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
literally.
So,
I'm thinking badass ice beer, but anyway.
But that's
and if I could I would recommend to people out there trying to do this, it's better to undershoot and then you could force carb the rest of the way than to be over and now you're scrambling to vent and you can't serve it and you're having problems and you're like trying to waste it. That's where
I might be a little bit of broken record on these two episodes, but this is a lot of information and it's tacking on to some information we want you to listen to back 15 years ago. It's readily available. But if we're not explaining ourselves, or if you're thinking that you have a reason why you must keg condition, we aren't talking about it, shoot us a question. We will address it.
Totally.
I promise you on that. Not trying to gloss over these things.
Yeah. And then if we could move to forced carbonating, I just kind of wanted to give a couple insights as like kind of from my experiences that I felt like the annals of Brew Strong didn't really touch on. For me, they were talking about over pressuring to do a quick carb, if you will, where you and then I would say what I do is I do that and I kind of set a timer or I set an alarm in my phone for 2 days. And what I also will do is I like to check it on the tap. And when I start to see like it goes from pouring very flat, like a kind of water coming out of a faucet, to more of like you can tell that there's bubbles in it and it's coming out with bubbles and you're seeing a foam start to build on the top of the beer. That's when I will go, all right, we're done with the force. We're going to serving pressure. And I will drop it back down. And, I don't go and some people will vent the keg to get it also to this. I say like, you know what, we're going to leave the keg at the overpressure. But so when I saw that little change, then I kind of said, okay, from now on, we're only going to supply the serving pressure. And that's worked really well for me in terms of not overcarbing on accident and having.
That's a smart way to do it.
Yeah.
So many people they I don't know where they learned to force carbonate, but it's like, yeah, I take it up to 60 psi and I shake it and I roll it and I do all this stuff, but it's like it's foamy. I can't pour it. It's like you need to equalize the pressure at some point.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm lazy, so I just put it at serving pressure for 4 days under 40 degrees, and it's ready to drink. Right?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I just get
useless.
impatient. I want to try it and see how it's, and you know.
And Mike, I'm asking this question halfway facetiously because I believe you could do it. You could probably draw the trend of how long at what pressure to hit what volume. Mike's a CAME, and I bet if you sat down, I mean, it wouldn't even have to be a nomogram. I think it might just be a single trended line. Well, you probably have a single trended line for 2 volumes, 2.5 volumes, 3 volumes, etc. But a trend of time versus pressure to get to X volumes. You could do that if you're really that much in a rush to get your beer carbonated.
In chemical engineering, we do a lot of mass transfer calculate. Would be a mass, like, so we're transferring the CO2 into the beer.
Into the beer. Yeah.
And so you could get that diffusion, and then, you quantify the flux, and then you'd figure out how much is it. And then when would you reach equilibrium? You go into the weeds, but no, I think
you can do it, Mike.
I could. I don't really want to.
Okay, question. Carb stone, no carb stone.
I see a carb stone as a contamination risk. I will never use one.
I believe it makes a difference, but I don't use it because of that.
The only time I use a carb stone is carbonated water.
Yeah, unless you're
trust it.
And I think it's a professional tool, right? It's to shorten the time span to turn the tank over faster.
That's something I think it makes a difference, but I'm not going to do it because of.
But I mean, they sell the carb caps for the corning cakes, right? So that has a carb stone on it. Yeah,
right. But my whole thing too is those professionals, and you would probably speak to this, Mufasa, that if they're using carb stones or even oxygen stones or whatever kind of stone, they're using ultrasonic cleaners. They're really getting them, they're putting them in the hygienic sanitizers. They're really making sure there's no solid material or contamination in there. And I think that as homebrewers, we're not, unless you want to spend the money for an ultrasonic cleaner, you don't need to, I think, wait an extra 2 days.
Yes. Yeah.
I would love for them to put it in ultrasonic, but I'm betting it's just because they have a better caustic, they have a better alkaline, and they have a better acid than I have.
Yeah, probably yes.
And honestly, too, with our lack of time constraints and kind of also, I always like to tell people that the beer is also conditioning in terms of it's kind of like a flower blossoming. I like to talk about the fog lifting or the dust settling, whatever you want to call when you rack a beer into a keg. No, I'm serious.
No, I understand you're serious.
Pick whichever one you want that makes it, because I like it more the dust settling, because like with a hazy IPA, it needs 2 to 3 weeks in a keg to really settle out and kind of show the flavors that it will show. And you're going to be well past your carbonation time for that. So you don't need to buy fancy tools to get it carbonated faster when the beer needs a week or two. Like I said, my new cream ale is only a week old. I want to give it a whole nother week before I really want to can it. So it's been carbonated for the last 4 days. Like I don't see the driver for those advanced carbonation techniques.
No, I agree. Plus, carbonation stones on corny keg caps are kind of silly expensive. So
leaking, all kinds of problems. I don't know. That's my 2 cents. And
your 2 cents is worth $1 because it's true.
Yeah, and if Brew Strong Nation out there has you're wrong because, I'd love to hear it. And I'm always open-minded about why maybe I could change my process and improve it. So I'm
best thing to do is let's get together and have a beer.
That
and try to tell me from my beer what was wrong with my process. That's not what you're going to find. You're going to find something else wrong with the beer, perhaps, but it's not going to necessarily be because of the process. Because I carved my beer in 2 days or a week. That's not what you're going to find.
Yeah. So with that, I think we've also got to a good point where we've increased the annals of Brew Strong Package-gasm.
We certainly have.
So now are we going to move on? Are we ready, Travis, for bottling or canning
Yes, I believe we are.
pressurized beer? The penultimate homebrewing
Challenge.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
You counter pressure filling. I don't, but it's Mufasa, you have experience in the past.
Oh yeah.
It's got a little bit of a comeback, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I mean, they have a couple of them now that one attaches to the faucet, and I can't remember the name of it, but I know a couple of people that use them.
Like tap right or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then
I've
put the
seen
bottle
those.
on.
And also, I forgot I have counter pressured once, but I'll come back to that. I forgot.
The other thing was the old equipment, which you needed 5 hands to operate. That was just silly. But yeah, they have single bottle counter pressure fillers where you just like put the bottle on. You evacuate with one valve and then you fill with the other, and they work fine. You whack it with a screwdriver so the foam comes up, then you cap on foam, and and those work fairly well. It's still kind of a pain in the ass. There's a lot of factors that people that are counter pressure filling don't always understand, and that is one: how cold are the bottles? How cold is the beer? How pressurized is the beer? How many volumes is it at? You kind of need to know these things if you're going to counter pressure fill, because there's so many different things that could go wrong on that. Cans, on the other hand, most of your auto fillers they don't counter pressure fill on cans.
Well, back up half a step.
Yeah.
You work at breweries with bottling lines.
I have, yes.
Anything close to a counter pressure fill on the bottling line?
Some of the older ones did exactly that. They went down, evacuated, filled, and then moved on. They kind of don't do that anymore. They kind of just do the same thing that cans do. They rinse, they evacuate, they fill, they cap on foam.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple of lines. I think there are things of beauty. You'll have a deboxer.
Right.
I was at Anchor, not Anchor.
They have depalletizers as well.
Depalletizer, yeah. You can't expect it. Yeah. So coming out of the boxes, flipping the bottles upside down, giving them a rinse, far less than a rinse than I ever feel safe with, flipping them back around, coming around this bottling line, straw drops in, fills that beer, comes around, gets a cap, gets a label. Woman watching this, and trust me, if that label's off 1 degree, she catches it.
Yep.
But not counter pressure filling, and not necessarily needed to be counter pressure filled. I mean,
as long as it's evacuated and then filled and then capped on foam.
Capped on foam.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to dial it into cap on foam, right?
Yes.
That's what they're going to have to do on that line, cap on foam. So I'm not trying to discount the counter pressure filling. I'm just trying to say that there's a lot of great beer out there that's not counter pressure filled.
Yeah. If I could throw my little...
No, Mike, not at all. Please.
I don't have any pro experience, but I did take brewery science at UC Davis, and they did have a pretty fancy like carousel counter pressure bottle filler. There's this little small thing, it's 30 bottles on the carousel, and it had the filling well and everything, and
it was counter pressure.
It was counter pressure, and it did the whole thing where it squirts the water and then kind of cap, and I just always thought that was such overkill.
So
I get it.
What I'm gathering here is some brewery that was ready to get rid of their counter pressure filler and go to a newer modern filler.
Yeah,
probably donated this thing to UC Davis, so you can go take a class there and watch an old school piece of equipment fill some bottles.
I don't know. Maybe, it was. I don't know. It was pretty wild, and I just thought that like everybody's been saying, the standard, at least for smaller craft beer, is now atmospheric filling and capping on foam and either seaming or crimping. So yeah.
And that's where the Blickman, beer gun is perfect for that, right?
I think. I just think if you're, I was listening to those old podcasts, and they were talking about spraying beer all over their ceiling, and and I actually, funny story about that. I was thinking, I had my local homebrew store. He kind of gave me this contraption where they took a filling straw, the one you'd use for bottle conditioning, and they put a stopper on it that fit a glass bottle, and then you'd use a picnic tap and put it on that straw, and you could do this really ghetto counter pressure where you pressurize the bottle with the beer and then you kind of crack the seal and let it leak. And they were actually talking about this in the 2010 episodes. And I just thought, man, I hated that so much. And I sprayed beer everywhere. And the counter pressure whole thing is because at the end of the day, what do you do as soon as you got to pull that apparatus out? You're going back down to atmospheric pressure.
Yeah.
Why would
That's where you cap on foam.
Right.
That was the whole idea of that.
Is like you flash it to get it to pop. Yeah, but like you said, just kind of strike it with a screwdriver. I like to do the whole, I don't know if you did this with your buddies back in the day, but somebody be holding a glass bottle and you tap your bottle on theirs and it's
it goes juice. Yeah.
I just do that. So I got I just do a little
kind of
and then I cap it, and that's what I ended up doing was the little I'd have a so when I do my growlers at home, I'll fill it with the beer gun, and let's say it didn't foam right, like I didn't have the gas setting correct or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'll literally take another growler, tink, get it to my
cap it.
I'll do a quick spurt of CO2 at the end, and that was one thing I was missing till a few years back, and they do cover that in the original Package-gasm. Give it a final spurt of CO2. So one thing I did while we're talking about bottle filling and counter pressure or beer gun, what have you, I was judging Op Firm some years back. Mufasa, you may remember when Mark Todd was hosting it at a distributorship he worked at that was right next to Farm Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some bottles. I couldn't see a bubble in them. And I thought, genius. There's no way there's oxygen in this bottle that has no bubbles. And the beer was good beer, and the beer poured well, and it had enough of what you can tell when you pour into a dinky plastic cup that it had head and carbonation. So I did a few high fills for a few competitions. I was getting dinged because people thought I didn't know how to fill a bottle.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could ream their anals.
But the main reason they went away from counter pressure filling, commercial devices is it's too slow.
Yeah,
it's too slow.
And highly CO2 wasteful, right?
And highly CO2 wasteful because
CO2 is not free.
Right. So you can't have one of these like 1,000 bottle a minute things that doing counter pressure fills. I mean, if you've gone to Budweiser or Coors or something, you watch those canning machines and previously the bottling machines work. They are moving at a very high speed. It's very hard to keep your eyes on them. And that's why they use a little printer mark to take out the ones that aren't quite right and the scale, because you could weigh each bottle in it. If it's not the right weight, boom, ejected. And then all the employees get to take home the low fills. But you just can't make those high speed machines and then do counter pressure filling. So evacuation, fill, cap on foam, or seam on foam. That's the way to go.
I think the proof in the pudding is the fact that canning lines are not counter pressure by nature. Right. And canning lines can be screaming fast.
Yes.
And I'm not saying Budweiser makes great beer. I will tell you that I believe Budweiser makes exactly what they want to make.
Exactly. And perfectly.
And yes, and they sample their cans at parts per billion.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. And oxygen. TPO.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't get a ring of yeast at the bottom of their cans that ate up that O2. It didn't go into the can.
Right.
So you don't need to counter pressure to get O2 free. I'm not telling you not to counter pressure. If that's what works for you, do it. I think there are easier routes that have at least as quality beer. I don't even know that you could do better with one or the other. I just think one is more of a hassle than the other, personally.
Yeah,
absolutely. Counter pressure filling, I'll never attempt that again.
Yeah. And what I was going to roll into is kind of the tuning of a beer gun, and I think there's something that I've never. Yeah, tuning. Bing. No, let's do it. Me. No musical tuning. I'm talking just the tuning of the pour of that beer gun. So I've never heard this said, and I kind of had to figure it out on my own. And I think I have a pretty good method, and I wanted to get into that a little bit. And really, what it is the beer gun comes with a specified length hose. I believe it's 10 feet. 10 to 12 feet, somewhere in there. It's pretty long.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a single regulator with 2 ports. So I have one gas, one going to the beer. I hook up the gas to the beer gun. I hook up the other one to the beer, obviously. And, kind of getting into like, you're trying to get that beer at the right volumes for the style, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to use that pressure to fill the can with the beer gun. Because if you change the pressure, it's going to take a certain amount of time to adjust the volumes in the beer, and it's probably more like 12 to 48 hours, not the 2 hours you're filling beers with. So
and immediately after you drop the pressure, if you're only dropping a little bit, you certainly, if you got 5 gallons of beer at 2.5 volumes and you take the headspace away, you can't take a whole lot of CO2 out of that beer.
Right.
You just can't, because the headspace will fill with that 2.5 volumes very quickly.
Yeah. And so with that, I think what's really important to know that you can do with a beer gun is you want to look for a certain type of fill. So I do a lot of canning. And I actually, recently, I noticed that there's like a seasonality to the way, because like if you're filling beers and filling cans in the summer in the hot garage, you get real foamy everywhere, foam. Yeah, low pressure. I actually this winter was canning the double IPA, and I noticed like, wow, man, there's like, I'm not getting any foam. This thing is quiescent a fill, and like it's just flat. I could see the beer on the top. I need to do something, and I was like, well, obviously, turn the pressure up. So that's where you kind of tune the fill rate, the fill pressure for the environment that you're filling it in, cold or hot. And then you've got, high volume, low volume beer. And then, kind of calculating, the pressure drop per foot of hose. And I argue that if, your 16 ounce pour, like I'm using 16 ounce cans, that's just 1 pint is kind of what I was just running through as an example. If that takes 15 seconds to fill, you're losing about 1.7 PSI per foot of 3/16 hose. So you can calculate. And what you want to get is where by the time it hits that can, the pressure is 0. So you're not getting any kind of flash, any kind of, that's where you probably want to tune it to get maybe a tiny bit so you can foam in the cold, or maybe you need to dial it back even more in the winter and the summer so it doesn't foam. But yeah, so if you have a 10-foot hose and it's 1.7 PSI per foot, that's filling at 17 PSI, right? And then you tune it from there based on how the cans are filling and sealing, or even the bottles. So that's where I wanted to kind of touch on and push the ball a little bit further from the old show was you can tune this thing, you can kind of adjust. And what you're looking for is that, not a lot of foam, but more than 0. And you want to be able, I would think that you shouldn't have to tap the bottle or rouse the can or do anything to get it to foam. Like your fill and the speed and the pressures should give you that perfect amount. You can tune the beer gun to give you that perfect amount of foam. And it's just a matter of too much foam. You probably want to dial back the pressure, and then too little foam, you want to dial the pressure up, and things like that. I would say you never want to use warm beer. That sucks because then it starts foaming in the line and all that crap. So cold beer, but you can definitely dial in the pour so then it's perfect and you don't have to do anything extra except just throw the lid on it or the cap on it and send it.
Well, I was never that scientific. I basically tuned my environment.
Yeah.
I filled everything in the cold room.
Oh, okay.
That's nice.
But like I'm in my garage.
I filled in the cold room too. That can be not so fun. It's chilly in the cold room, but you're gonna get the best fill you can get because the whole thing stays cold. And Mike, I got distracted for a half second there. I apologize. That's an outstanding piece of information for the geek ear of our members, and there's no shortage of geeky beer brewers out there. So if you didn't catch Mike's equation, again, send us a Q&A. We will jump right on it and reiterate what Mike said. And honestly, there's a few things said more recently that I think need to get on tape more than once, and that's one of them. So we'll revisit that sooner or later with that bit of information.
That's brilliant because I don't think a lot of people even think that way about the beer gun. Like I said, I tuned my environment rather than figuring out the whole thing.
I would say
also, if you're filling more than 3 bottles for competition, you have time to tune it. If you're filling 3 bottles for competition, you could screw up 2 bottles and have 3 more bottles to go.
All right. You ready for this? This is what I do for competitions. I'll give you my other little secret, everybody.
So run through that, and we're going to take our last break, I think, Mike. So yes, please go.
All right, real quick. What I do is I almost treat it like a run of liquor, like a distillation. So I get my first 5 to 6 cans that I'm kind of like, I'm still tuning it, getting it right. And then I get to what I call the hearts of my packaging, where I know that the lines have been cleared, the packaging pressures are all good. Those are the ones that I'll pick to send off. And then at the end of the run, where like, maybe I'm getting into that sludge or something's, the bottom of the keg's kind of getting nasty, or I'm worried that I'm going to run out of beers, That's those are the ones that I also will so the first ones I put off just for me, the last ones I put off just for me, those middle,
the hearts,
15, the hearts of the canning package line are the ones that are competition eligible. So that's
so Jets, my secret on that is the first few are the ones I share with my friends. The last few are the ones I share with my friends also. And the ones that I love competition beers.
Yeah, they're the ones that the money makers. Those are the money
I plan to drink the first couple, and when I cap, and you guys may or may not see it, the caps I use some fancy caps. I don't use that for competition. So I'll hit the competition caps after the first 1 or 2 filled. Same thing, dial it in. But if you really only intend to fill 3 bottles plus this, hopefully you're keeping one for yourself, you don't have a whole lot of tuning time.
That makes it tough. But
so work on your process and all that. And I apologize because I said, Mike, we're going to take a break. So Mike, let's take a break.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Make your next vacation unforgettable. On Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Star of the Seas, it's everything you've loved about every family vacation you've ever been on, with mind-blowing thrills at the largest water park at sea, 7 onboard pools for every level of chill, more than 40 ways to dine and drink, and even more to enjoy at our award-winning private island, Perfect Day at Coco Cay. This is the new Star of the Seas. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
Hit pause on whatever you're listening to and hit play on your next adventure. Stay 2 nights and get a $50 Best Western gift card. Life's a trip. Make the most of it at Best Western. Visit bestwestern.com for complete terms and conditions.
Back to the 2 guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, and we're back, and this is episode 2 of
Package-gasm 2, the Emily Capper Strikes Back.
Excellent, and we are wrapping up in our final segment here of our second Package-gasm. I feel like we've generated a lot of questions, so I expect our folks to throw some questions at us, and we can have some nice packaging Q&As to follow up, because this is a larger topic than, as I said, just filling and capping a bottle. So, Mike, take us home, baby.
Yeah, no. So to really recap all of this, again, we're trying to get the beer, as Mufasa said, as high quality as we can to your lips. I mean, we're trying to take it from that fermentation vessel to your lips in the best possible way. And I think, things like pressure conditioning kind of things with kegs and canning and these more advanced techniques, they make your beer better. But I think we've shown in the last 2 episodes that you can make great beer and you can do great things with kind of those rudimentary techniques. I will say one last thing about kegging and serving from a keg. A lot of people also with that line pressure drop per foot don't think about if you want to be able to have a high pressure beer, let's say a Lambic or a Belgium, a Trappist Ale or a Hefeweizen, you just need a longer beer line. right? So then you can store that beer at a higher pressure and serve it at a higher pressure, but that you're dropping the pressure over the length of that line down to 0, which is atmospheric pressure. So you don't have a lot of foaming as you pour. And
But you
so
still have carbonation.
About the length,
but you still have the carbonation because the carbonation hasn't come out of the beer. So the whole thing is really adjust. It's like for serving beer out of a keg with like a tap, is the length of the line is what dictates the pour quality there. Because if you want to hit a certain volume, you're gonna have to adjust the length. So other than that,
question on that, Mike. I think you can answer this easily. Let's say I went standard with a 14-foot length of tubing.
Mhm.
So my lower CO2 beers, I'd have to crank up a little bit. I'm only canning for 20, 30 minutes, bottling 20, 30 minutes. Am I going to have an overpressurization issue? Am I going to have a foaming issue because I kept that higher pressure on my keg for 20, 30 minutes?
No. I mean, there will be some CO2 uptake during that 20 minutes, but it's so small that I have not seen it in my beers that I do that with. And I've actually had, like I said, where in the hot summer in the garage, the beer's foaming in the line. Like it's getting to where it's flashing inside the line because it's so hot. I crank the pressure up even higher. So to drive it to the faucet to keep it in there. And then so we don't have that flash inside the line. And so that's another trick if you're having it foam, like you can see it in the clear line, like the foam is coming out and it's like kind of spurting out of the beer gun. Don't be afraid to turn up the pressure on the keg to try to drive it a little faster, get it into the can faster. If you're having that foaming issue with it in the line, if you're having a foaming issue, like, it's coming out too fast and then that kind of it's spraying into the can and foaming or bottle and foaming everywhere, you need to turn it down. So there's two different sides of that. And the big one is that, again, the focus, and I'll finish on this, is you want that beer going into that bottle at atmospheric pressure. So you kind of want to match the way it's being poured with atmospheric pressure to keep all that yummy CO2 in there and get you a nice beer at the end of the day. So,
Brilliant.
I mean, yeah.
That's brilliant. A lot of times when I'm talking to people about foaming issues, it sounds counterintuitive, but 90% of the time they needed to turn the pressure up.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's also, I would say, in so much of engineering, if you do something and it gets worse, stop doing it.
Yeah.
Like if you did it and it made it foamier, go the other way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that intuitive
process.
Kind of.
So flow.
Yeah.
Hey, Doc, it hurts when I do this. Well, don't do that.
Don't do it.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
But it's
foaming is a
so
slow process. Fast adjustments. You're not going to see what you're doing to it necessarily. Make sure you clear your line and your dip tube to see what's really going on. But it's the strangest thing. I mean, if you go back, no one here has ever pumped up a keg full of absolute atmospheric air and, drinking off a picnic tap, and you pump it up too much, foamy as hell. Gets too low, foamy as hell. Sweet spot, you'll never hit it. Plus you've oxidized the crap out of that junky beer you bought anyway.
That's all I got. I mean, I think we've reached back into the anals and we've made some very good key points and
yeah, we definitely fisted that.
I'm double checking. I'm double checking on the feed here on Facebook, and we have wowed them to absolutely zero outstanding questions. And if you had questions, we would love for you to have been listening along live and ask us questions live. Would have fit those in. Would have made fun of ourselves while answering your questions. We don't make fun of you because that's not fun. It's funner to tease each other. And it is always live. We record live. It goes to Facebook. It stays on Facebook for about 30 days. It's a Facebook rule. The video will be processed as will the audio be processed. And video ends up on YouTube as a podcast. YouTube, what's it called? YouTube Music, I think. Now, the video goes straight to YouTube. The audio goes to YouTube Podcast as an Android user and all the other typical podcast locations.
Wherever podcasts are sold.
Yeah, and if you're not getting it at your podcast location, send us an email because Justin's all over that, making sure that you can always hear what you want to hear from us.
Yeah.
We have plenty of sponsors, plus our longtime, I don't want to say favorite, but our favorite sponsor, Anvil, which is Blickman, making excellent products. I honestly, I go to their website first for damn near everything when it comes to brewing. But all of our sponsors
I would just say on Blickman too, just last, they're great people. I mean, you want to frequent the businesses that have great people and great staff, and they're doing good things for good reasons. Blickman.
And if you haven't listened to our show with Drew, go back and listen to our show with Drew. It should be titled Blickman or Drew, or Blickman Drew, or all of the above. Drew is yes, he's outstanding. He's taking over for John. John, I don't know where John sits, but he's still supporting for sure. If you don't realize it, they don't officially support some Facebook pages, but they support some Facebook pages. And when you go there, they'll even tell you who you need to ask for if you're having problems with your Blickman or Anvil gear. It's an amazing company. The service is bar none. The products are top notch and across the board. I need to end up brewing at a brewery that has something like as their Blickman as their pilot system, because I've gone up to either barrel or half barrel is as big as I've gone, and my current system is the 10.5 Anvil Foundry. I've brewed across a lot of their equipment, and you can't say no complaints because you always want something different, but far fewer complaints than I've had on anything else I've ever used.
Did you ever go to 4J's?
I did not.
Yeah, they had a 2-barrel Blickman is what they used there.
Oh, wow. It's nice. Say it was nice.
It was nice. It was compact. It was, easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
They made beer.
Yeah. I mean, Blickman, it's compact because he understands space is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they get it. They don't just say, okay, you've got this massive space. Let me fill all your space with my. No. It's also you're just one person. You don't want to go from here to there to have to transfer and move pumps and hoses. You move a couple valves. The whole concept of home brewing is relatively central to our entire brew kit. And even on nice big systems, there's still you go up one set of stairs and you go from piece to piece to piece. So I imagine Blickman would have done this similar for their pilot style systems, which aren't really pilots. I mean, some breweries 2.5 is their system.
You can nano, micro.
Nano is what I suggest to most of my clients during my consulting days, because that nano could always turn into a pilot system.
Yep.
Always.
I'd rather go nano than go 7, kind of.
Well, nowadays you better go nano before you go anything else.
Yeah, and
there are a number of companies
10 or larger.
that are gone, that overbuilt their breweries and never had a chance to go into distribution.
So that's our favorite sponsor, obviously, but it's not our favorite sponsor. We love all our sponsors here. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to go to the Brewing Network's website, where you can get your own custom-made shirts and so forth. And I say custom-made because they are, I believe, printed to order.
They are.
There is a Brew Strong website out there. I'll need to get the link from Jamil. I have my custom Brew Strong mug that I'm drinking out of right now that I can't even tell you where to go. It's shameful. Sorry, Jamil.
It is, you shameful person, you.
That's me. That's how I live. And thank you for coming, everybody. Remember, brew often, brew well, brew improving, brew strong.
Brew strong, everybody.
And brew strong, my brothers.